Jerusalem, a city where history breathes in every stone, where the echoes of ancient footsteps still whisper through its narrow streets. The golden glow of the dome of the rock touches the sky, while the weathered stones of the western wall hold the prayers of millions. This is a place where faith collides with fate, where prophets once walked, and where the destiny of nations was written. But long before the struggles of today, before the rise and fall of empires, before the city became a battleground of beliefs, it was the home of a shepherd, a warrior, a king, and a prophet. A man whose voice could calm the beasts, whose hands could wield the sword, and whose heart was devoted to the one true God. His name was Dawud. From the fields of Bethlehem to the throne of Jerusalem, his journey was one of trial, triumph, and wisdom. But how did a simple shepherd rise to become one of the greatest kings of all time? And what test did Allah place before him that would shake even the strongest of hearts? After the passing of Musa, the reins of leadership were handed to Joshua or Yusha bin Nun, who led the Israelites into the sacred land of Jerusalem. The city was divided, with two great cities emerging, Jericho and Jerusalem. After the passing of Joshua, the land saw a succession of prophets and kings, each one sent to guide the children of Israel on their path. It became clear as the years passed that the descendants of Yaqub's son Levi would bear the mantle of prophecy, while those of Judah or Yehuda would carry the crown of kings. Despite the divine guidance granted to them, the tribes of Israel could not escape the bickering and envy that often crept into the hearts of men. The 12 tribes began to turn on one another, each proud of their lineage, and some looking down upon their brethren with disdain. Amidst the strife within the ancient walls of Jerusalem, another people thrived, the Philistines. These giants, fierce and powerfully built, lived just outside the gates of Israel's stronghold, and their strength was unmatched by any in the land. When the children of Israel, emboldened by their belief that their God had given them the land, went to war with the Philistines, they were met with a crushing defeat. It was a devastating blow. Men perished in battle, women and children were taken as captives, and the sacred Ark of the Covenant, the chest containing the relics of Musa, was stolen. It was in this moment of despair and loss, when the light of hope seemed dim, that Allah chose to send a prophet to guide the children of Israel. His name would be Samuel, and with him would come a new chapter in the story of their faith and their destiny. Samuel, a man of deep faith and divine wisdom, had been chosen by Allah to lead the people during a time of spiritual decline and growing threats from their enemies. The Israelites, despite being Allah's chosen people, had grown weary of this scattered leadership, and they longed for a king to unite them. One day, the elders of Israel came to Samuel with a plea. They had seen how other nations had kings, rulers who could command armies and bring victory in battle, and they believed that having a king would strengthen their position against the Philistines, who were growing more powerful with each passing year. Samuel called the people together and warned them of what they were asking for. If Allah were to send you a king, would you fight for the cause of Allah and stand firm in his path? Samuel asked. The people, eager to have a leader, responded confidently, "Of course, we will fight, and we will follow the king you choose for us. We will defeat the Philistines and reclaim what is rightfully ours." In the midst of the growing unrest and uncertainty, Allah spoke to Samuel, guiding him towards a new leader for the people of Israel. Allah revealed that there was a man amongst them, a man named Dawud, or Saul, who Allah had chosen to lead them against the Philistines. When Samuel delivered this divine message to the people of Israel, they were quick to voice their objections. "How can it be him?" they asked. "He does not meet the qualifications we expect in a ruler. He is of a poor family, and his lineage is not revered. How can he lead us into battle against the mighty Philistines?" The Israelites had long associated kingship with the strong, noble families of their nation. They had forgotten that Allah's wisdom and guidance transcended human expectations and social status. Samuel, however, did not waver in his response. With deep conviction, he answered the people, saying, "You question the choice of Allah, but know this: Allah has chosen Dawud because of two qualities that make him fit to rule above you: strength and wisdom. Allah has given him a body that is strong, capable of enduring the trials of battle, and a mind that possesses the wisdom necessary to lead. It is not lineage or wealth that determines who will rule, but the qualities bestowed upon them by Allah." Allah in His infinite wisdom inspired Samuel. He was told to tell his people that a sign that Dawud is their rightful leader would be the return of the Ark of the Covenant. The Israelites, though still unsure and hesitant, waited in anticipation. But as Allah had promised, the Ark of the Covenant, once taken by the Philistines, was returned to them, brought by angels as a sign of Allah's mercy and power. The sacred chest, which contained the relics of Musa, including the tablets of the law, had been lost to the Philistines for a time, but now it was back in the hands of the people of Israel, unharmed, a symbol of Allah's covenant and His favor upon them. When the people saw the ark returned without a fight, they were convinced Dawud, their newly appointed king, was indeed the leader chosen by Allah. The people, now bolstered by this divine sign, approached Dawud and asked him what they should do next. They were eager to go to battle against the Philistines to reclaim their land and secure their future. Dawud, now affirmed in his role as king, knew that the time had come to lead them into war. But before they marched, Allah had a plan to test the hearts of the people, one that would reveal who amongst them were truly steadfast and who would fall prey to fear. Many among the Israelites had a tendency to falter in the face of hardship. Their history was littered with moments where, when tested, they had run from battles, shrunk from challenges, and allowed fear to take hold. Allah knew that in order to lead the people to true victory, they would first have to prove their commitment and steadfastness. And so, Allah devised a test to sift through the hearts of the people. Dawud called together the army of Israel, and as they prepared to set out for battle, he issued a command that would soon reveal the depth of their faith. He told them, "When we reach to the edge of the river Jordan, do not drink from it, except from a small sip. Whoever drinks from the river in excess, let him not follow us into battle. Only those who are steadfast and disciplined will continue." As they marched, they came to the river that Allah had appointed as their test. The soldiers, parched and weary from their journey, were tempted by the cool, clear waters that lay before them. The thirst was overwhelming, but they remembered Dawud's word and knew that they must refrain disciplined. Yet, many of them, unable to resist the temptation, drank deeply from the river. They quenched their thirst greedily, unable to keep themselves in check. And so, the number of soldiers was reduced, leaving behind only those who were truly resolute in their faith and commitment. The rest, who had allowed their desires to govern their actions, turned away from the battle, leaving the core of the army to face the Philistines. Among the chosen men who stood by Dawud, ready for battle, was one individual who stood out. Not for his size or experience, but for his faith and his courage. He was barely in his teens, a young shepherd with no formal training in warfare. His name was Dawud, or David. Though he was young, his heart was pure and his faith in Allah was unwavering. He had been raised in the fields, tending to his father's flock, but his trust in Allah had made him wise beyond his years. As the army of Israel crossed the river and made their way towards the battlefield, they soon saw in the distance the enemy they were meant to face. The ground trembled under the mighty footsteps of a giant, Jalut, also known as Goliath. He was an imposing figure, a colossal man, covered head to toe in heavy armor. His eyes burned with the hunger for battle, and his presence alone sent a chill through the hearts of the Israelite soldiers. Jalut was no ordinary warrior. He was a giant amongst men, a fearsome leader of the Philistine army, and he seemed to tower over the battlefield like a living mountain. With a roar that echoed across the valley, Jalut bellowed, "Who among you dares to face me in combat? Choose a champion to fight me, and if he is victorious, we will surrender. But if I defeat him, you shall be our servants." Among the men, murmurs of doubt began to spread. They turned to Dawud, their king, seeking guidance and strength. "How can we, few in number, face this giant and his army? He is like no enemy we have faced before. He is a force of nature, and we are but a small, weary army. What hope do we have against him?" Among the soldiers, young Dawud stood silently, listening to the words of his king. He had no fear of Jalut, no hesitation in his heart. Dawud knew that victory could only come through faith in Allah, and he was ready to place his trust in the one who had always guided him. As Jalut stood taunting the Israelites from the Philistine ranks, Dawud stepped forward. His voice, though soft, carried with it the conviction of one who knew the power of Allah in his heart. "I will face him," Dawud said. His words caused a ripple of surprise amongst the soldiers. "I will fight Jalut." The soldiers looked at the young shepherd, astonished. How could he, a boy with no armor or weapon, dare to challenge such a giant? But Dawud's faith was unshakable, and he stepped forward with nothing but his sling and his unyielding trust in Allah. Dawud, though initially surprised, looked into Dawud's eyes and saw a strength that was not of this world. "If you believe you can do this, then go, and Allah be with you," Dawud said, his voice full of concern and hope. Dawud, who was a master with a sling, walked towards the battlefield, not afraid of the giant who towered before him. Jalut sneered as he saw the young boy approach, mocking him with cruel words. "Am I a dog that you send a child to fight me?" he said. "Come, little one, let me crush you beneath my feet." But Dawud, undeterred, responded calmly, "You come at me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come in the name of Allah, the one who created the heavens and the earth. Today, it is not your strength that will win the battle, it is Allah's will." With that, Dawud reached into his pouch and pulled out a smooth stone. He placed it in his sling and swung it with precision, aiming for the one vulnerable spot on Jalut's forehead. With a single shot, the stone flew through the air. The stone struck Jalut's forehead with a mighty force, and the giant collapsed to the ground with a thunderous crash. The Philistine army stood in stunned silence as their champion lay defeated, while the Israelites erupted in cheers. Dawud and the soldiers looked on in awe as the young boy, Dawud, stood victorious. His faith had not faltered, and through his trust in Allah, the impossible had been made possible. With Goliath defeated, the Philistines fled in fear. Dawud was given the kingdom to rule with justice, wisdom, and knowledge, qualities that Allah would bestow upon him as he walked in the path of righteousness. Under his rule, the people of Israel flourished. He ruled with a heart full of humility, always seeking to follow the guidance of Allah in his decisions. He was known for his fairness, his kindness, and his ability to unite the tribes of Israel. Under his reign, the nation found peace and prosperity, and Dawud was loved by his people, who saw in him not just a ruler, but a man of deep integrity and wisdom. Allah had blessed Dawud with a unique gift, a voice that would captivate all who heard it. Dawud was endowed with a beauty of voice so profound that it would draw not just people, but even the birds and creatures of the earth. When he recited the praises of Allah, the very air seemed to pause in reverence. His words, filled with the light of divine truth, resonated with the hearts of all who listened. It is said that when Dawud recited the words of Allah, birds would gather around him in flocks, sitting in stillness, listening to the melody of his voice. Even the winds and the trees seemed to sway in harmony with the sound of his recitations. His voice had a magnetic beauty, one that echoed the divine wisdom that flowed through him. But the greatest blessing Allah gave to Dawud was the revelation of the Zabur, or the Psalms, a book of divine songs and praises, a holy scripture filled with wisdom, guidance, and a reflection of Allah's majesty. The Psalms became Dawud's constant companion, and he would recite them often, whether in the quiet solitude of his chambers or in the presence of his people. One of Dawud's key roles was that of a judge. His wisdom, guided by the Psalms and the light of Allah's revelation, made him a fair and just adjudicator. People would come from far and wide, seeking his judgment in matters of dispute. Dawud was known for his ability to look beyond the surface, to see the truth in every case, and to rule with compassion and fairness. His judgments were not only based on the law, but on the moral and spiritual principles of righteousness, mercy and justice. He had set up his week in such a way that all his affairs could be settled in 4 days. The first day of Dawud's week was wholly devoted to the worship of Allah. He would spend the entire day in prayer, recitation of the Psalms, and reflection on the divine wisdom that had been revealed to him. The second day of the week, Dawud would dedicate to his role as a judge. He would sit with his people, resolving disputes and offering counsel. His wisdom, shaped by his deep understanding of Allah's teaching, made him an exceptional judge. His judgments were often accompanied by advice that led people to live better lives, guided by the moral principles of their faith. The third day was devoted to education and guidance. Dawud would gather the people and speak to them, offering sermons on justice, mercy and faith. He would share with them the wisdom he had received from Allah, teaching them the ways of truth and how to live a righteous life. The fourth day, Dawud set aside for himself. This was the day when he would rest, reflect and recharge his spirit. He understood that in order to serve his people and lead, he had to maintain his own well-being. In addition to his structured schedule, Dawud's devotion to Allah was reflected in his dedication to fasting. He fasted every other day, a practice that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would later commend, calling it the best of fasts amongst the people. Although Dawud's discipline was admired and his devotion to Allah was unwavering, Allah in his infinite wisdom chose to teach Dawud an important lesson about leadership and flexibility. Allah wanted to teach Dawud that a leader must also possess the ability to adapt to the needs of his people. A ruler who is too rigid in his personal practices may overlook the diverse needs of his people who are not bound by the same constraints. Allah sent 2 angels to Dawud in the form of 2 men to impart this lesson. It was on one of Dawud's days devoted entirely to the worship of Allah, when he was deeply immersed in his prayer and recitation of the Psalms, that 2 men entered his place of worship. They had somehow entered his private sanctuary, startling him. One of the men spoke, "We are 2 people in dispute. One of us has wronged the other, so judge between us with justice and do not be unjust. Guide us to the right path. This man is my brother. He has 99 sheep, while I only have 1, yet he insists on taking my only sheep and has overpowered me in argument." Hearing this, Dawud immediately gave his judgment, saying, "He has certainly wronged you by demanding your only sheep to add to his own. Indeed, many partners oppress one another, except those who believe and do righteous deeds, but how few they are." However, as soon as Dawud spoke, the 2 men disappeared. He realized that this situation was more than just a simple dispute. It was indeed a test from Allah. He understood that he had rushed to judgment without listening to the second man's response. By structuring his week the way he did, Dawud had unintentionally made it difficult for people to reach him on certain days. If someone had a dispute but had to wait for a specific day, it could delay justice. Likewise, his worship, advice, and personal time were also separated rather than balanced. So he changed this and made each day a balance of all 4 tasks he would have usually done over 4 days. This would ensure justice was swift, his worship was constant, and his leadership was more effective. Understanding this lesson, Dawud immediately fell into prostration, seeking forgiveness from Allah. He realized that even as a prophet and a king, he could improve in how he managed his time. Allah forgave him and reaffirmed his status as a wise and just ruler. And so, Dawud ruled wisely until his final days. ensuring that justice was always upheld. Worship remained at the heart of his leadership, and his people thrived under his care. He had faced tests, learnt from them, and emerged as one of the greatest kings and prophets in history. But as all things must, his time eventually came to an end. The great king, the just ruler, the devoted worshipper, returned to his Lord. His kingdom mourned, for they had lost a leader unlike any other. Yet, this was not the end of the story, for a new ruler was about to rise, one who would inherit not only his father's throne, but also a power unlike anything the world had ever seen, a prophet who would speak to the wind, command the jinn, and understand the language of animals, a man whose wisdom would surpass even that of his father Dawud. His name was Sulaiman.